It's a whole lot of us, that's my family. Wanna go higher, turn up the tempo, increase the BPM, okay. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM. Increase the BPM.
What's up, guys? Welcome to our weekly podcast, In the Huddle, where we asked current or former athletes and coaches into this huddle, into this space, to tell their story, what God has done, what he's doing, and what he will continue to do. I'm really excited about today. I have one of my dear friends, former football player at the University of Louisville, current New York Giant, but more importantly, just a brother in Christ, Brian Hudson. Brian, thanks for coming into our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, well, I've known you obviously for a while, but there's a lot of people that outside of just trying to Google information, man, I love to have people in here where they can just tell their story. So you're from Scott County?
From Scott County, yeah.
Scott County.
Kentucky.
Tell me, I know your family. I know your family really well, but take us back to growing up. What was it like to grow up in your household?
Yeah, it was awesome. I came from, my parents, have been unbelievable to me and my two older sisters, Haley and Katie. We grew up on a farm in Williamstown, Kentucky, and we ended up going to school in Scott County, and then later kind of I think it was maybe sometime in high school for me is when we moved to Georgetown, actually. But my grandmother who built the house on the farm, and our family who built the house on the farm, she still lives there, and so but yeah, we grew up on a farm, and so a lot of kind of our values and things that we learned growing up were there working on the farm with animals. We had we've always had horses, and at certain points we've had a few head of cattle and chickens and things like that. Just learning the value of taking care of things and kind of that unselfishness that you have to be able to do that. But a lot of the values and stuff, that's where it kind of started was, on the farm there. And but yeah,
so many questions
sisters,
about that, man. So like so many people, when say grew up on a farm, a lot of people, especially if people are from the city, they don't know what that's like. So what's a typical day on the farm? I know it's working hard, but like what does that look like?
Yeah, it's I mean, it kind of depends. We by no means were like a large scale farm or anything like that. A lot of my family, aunts and uncles and extended family have a lot more land, and they raise a lot more like head of cattle, or they may grow tobacco or corn or different things like that. And so we would spend a lot of time helping with them and just baling hay in the summer and things like that. But for us on our farm and what we had, like when we had the animals, for example, like when we had chickens, it would be going out to get eggs and just clean up and things like that, the chicken coop and everything. Or even just right now there on the farm, there's just like one horse is all that's there right now. And so even then, it's just making sure there's water and putting out feed or hay for her and things like that. Just kind of taking care of the animals is really the biggest thing that as far as that what it entailed for us growing up.
Man, I thought I knew how to work until I spent some time on the farm, and that was work. This typical thing, this specific thing that I was talking about was tobacco and just cutting tobacco and housing tobacco and doing that.
Yeah.
Now I thought I knew what work was until you do something like that. So you grew around a hard work ethic. Like, man, you're going to work, and that's the thing that you can say about farmers. You may see some poor farmers, but you're never going to see a lazy farmer.
No, definitely not.
It's just impossible to be a lazy farmer. So you learned a great work ethic, which it's still embedded in your family's DNA. You look at anybody in your family, man, and they're workers, and I've seen you kind of carry that over. You go to Scott County High School. Tell me what sports look like for you.
Yeah, growing up, I played basketball, football, and track and field. Football is what I started with. I started when I was like 5 years old, playing football. Basketball and track came like fourth, fifth grade, I think, somewhere around there. And So same for my sisters. You know, they were both athletes, and they played softball, volleyball, basketball, pretty much all the way through. And track was the main thing for both of them, I think. And so, but yeah, I played basketball up until my freshman year of high school, I think, and then actually the only reason I stopped was because I broke my foot, and it put me out for some of the track season, and so that was kind of the more important one for me. So I ended up after that just sticking with football and track all the way through college, really. But yeah, the Scott County, they were amazing. The athletic program there, even now, but especially when I was there, it was always, you know, very competitive. They took, you know, put a lot of resources into all their athletics and all their sports from all perspectives. So
Yeah, I had the joy knowing your family. So, you know, I guess I think the sporting events that I have, obviously with football when you got to U of L, but I don't know if I've seen your family miss any sporting events. You know, has that always been like your mom and dad always been there and present and just enjoy? Was sports kind of pushed on you guys, or was it just like, hey, if y'all want to play this, play it?
No, yeah, they wanted us to try new things and everything, and we were always active. Again, just, you know, kind of another thing with growing up kind of on land and playing on, you know, on the farm and stuff. We were always active and out doing things, and so anything that we had any curiosity about or wanted to do, you know, they made sure to, you know, kind of lean into that and get us, you know, whatever we wanted to do or start to play or learn. You know, they either started to, you know, teach us, or they got us to somebody who could. And so that was, and that kind of lasted all the way through high school. And, you know, so I would say it was pushed on us, but we, you know, whatever we wanted to do, they made sure that, you know, we were able to stick to it and actually work to do.
That's good. At what part did you realize that, hey, sports, you know, you've been given a gift, and I can go to the next level, and I can really alleviate some of this financial pressure of mom and dad sending money to school. I can get this thing really taken care of. At what part did you realize, like, hey, I can play at the next level?
Gosh, that was, for me, for football especially, that was always what I knew I was going to do. You know, to me, it wasn't ever in my mind a question of if I was going to do it or, you know, if I could do it. That was always something that, you know, I felt like if I stuck my mind to that, you know, that was just another goal for me, is to play at that, at the professional level. And so, you know, thankfully God blessed me with, you know, the size and, you know, the measurables to be able to do that. And so, in my mind, that was always something that I, you know, was going to set out to do. But probably sometime in maybe late middle school, early high school, when I really my freshman year, I remember when I first started getting offers and interest and everything, and that's when I was like, wow, this is really, you know, this can happen. Because in Scott County, you know, that when I was in school, there was only one high school in the whole county, and we have had a lot of athletes go through and you know, play at the college level, but not really. We maybe had one or two that played in Power 5, or I guess now Power 4. But and so it hadn't really been done a whole lot. And so when I first started getting those interests and the colleges started to come around, and you see, you know, I started to see Kentucky and Louisville and Florida, you know, all these big schools. That's when I was like, wow, this is really kind of, I'm starting to see it a little bit more. You know, it's right there in front of me to be able to go get it, kind of.
That's so good. Yeah, and you're such a humble man, and so God placed you at Blacksburg, there,
Blacksburg,
Virginia Tech, and you know, you played there. And I remember when you were transferring in, a guy that is the chaplain there at Virginia Tech, Dave Gettings, he called me up and he said, hey man, I just want to let you know you're getting an awesome guy that is going to be part of your FCA program. He's going to grow. He's going to make people around him better. And man, Dave spoke the truth. You came in, and you always had like you're a gentle giant, man. Like you can, you got a calm nature. You got a strength under control. And where'd you get? I think I know where that came from, but where was that modeled for you?
That's a good question. I would say, honestly, most of the men in my family are kind of like that. I would say, especially my dad, being a quiet guy, and but really, all of my family, they and my parents, they kind of always would talk about how you actions speak louder than words, and you just kind of, they just kind of embodied and showed me the patience and just the, like you said, the calm nature that that I guess just kind of comes naturally to me, and just watching them and how they kind of go about certain situations and just their day-to-day life, and really just, I think part of it, especially now that I'm growing in my faith and my relationship with Christ, is just that part of that's just knowing that He's in control and He's got every situation, and so I just have never felt like I had to be, super, I don't know, loud, and I've never been outgoing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because, I'm very thankful for my wife Riley, and we've been together for a long time now, since 2015. So we were, right before high school. We've been together for a long time, and she's kind of brought a little bit of that out of me, a little bit more, as far as just being a little bit more outgoing and kind of getting out of my comfort zone, especially in social settings and things like that. So, I think there's a little bit of both sides there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's one of the, to me, one of the most desirable traits to have, and it's not that you don't have anything to say, because you do. It's one of those things like, I'm not going to waste my words, but when I use my words, they're going to be really, really good. And it's not like that you're not strong and you're powerful, because chances are you're probably one of the strongest ones in the rooms that you are in. And it's not that you're not tough, because you have to be tough to do what you do. And so it's just, it's strength under control. And it's what the Bible calls meek. And you have it, and you've embodied that. You've modeled that for me. There's a lot of times my prayers is like, Lord, I want to be more gentle. I want to be, and that's not weak. And you've modeled that, man. You've modeled that from the moment I have saw you on campus to even today. And it's an incredible trait to have. And I hope everybody that has watched you looks that and say, "Wow, that's the God that we serve. He gave that to Brian. He could also give that to me." And so that's really, really good to have. So you came to Louisville, immediately getting plugged into our FCA program. What was FCA like to you?
It was amazing, especially coming to Louisville. Thankfully, I had my older sister Haley, who was a part of it and very involved in FCA, and went consistently. And now when I first got to Louisville, that was when we were still kind of online, I think, and doing the Zoom thing, especially that spring of 2021. I think that may have been the last semester, I think, that we did the Zoom calls. And so I was able to just join with her and start to get plugged in a little bit. And but I remember when we first went back to meeting in person at the football facility there in one of the suites. I forget which one it was, but I was just honestly overwhelmed with the amount of athletes that came and were a part of it, which was amazing for me to see. But FCA, from the beginning for me, it's always been an amazing time and place for me just to kind of take a breath each week. Thinking back to in college about the FCA meetings and the serve team meetings and things that we would do, or the football Bible studies. It was always just kind of a breath, a time to kind of take a second and just reflect on either the week prior and look to the week ahead, and just kind of, more importantly, be in the present and just kind of dive into God's Word, to be around people and other athletes, and at the bigger FCA meetings, athletes of other sports that we don't usually get to be around or be in the same setting as. So that was a huge plus. But just to be around other athletes that also have that hunger and also have that desire to deepen their relationship with the Lord and to just continue to grow in their faith, grow in their relationship, and just to learn. And so I think that's been that was the biggest thing for me when I think of FCA. I think of just how Jesus can affect a campus and how Jesus can affect the lives of so many young people that are trying to figure it out, that are most of the time at a new place, away from family a lot of times for the first time, and completely around new friends, new people. It's just a good time for people to just grow together, to get to know other people, and just kind of feel at home, I think.
Yeah, that's good. I love what I get a chance to do with FCA because I have obviously a love for Jesus, but to have played sports for most of my life, and even getting close to you guys allows me to kind of fulfill that I guess that itch that an athlete always has. You want to get close to the field, and I see the importance of the platform that's been given to athletes. Take us when you first kind of really understood your need for Jesus, like that Jesus became not your mom and dad's faith, but more of like, hey, I'm making this a decision for myself, that he's Lord of my life.
That's a great question. I would say, especially growing up, we went to church. That was always something that I knew that, I knew the gospel growing up, but, I wouldn't say that I ever really, growing up, or really especially up until college, I didn't really have that relationship with God. So I would say, really, when I transferred from Virginia Tech to Louisville, that was a pretty difficult time. I mean, that was before the transfer portal and all this kind of craziness that is kind of the way it is now. And so going through that process of deciding to transfer, which I never wanted to do, and then we ended up, that was a decision that I felt was best for me. And so going through that process and having to leave the community that I had built in Virginia at Virginia Tech. And thankfully, I was coming back, home, closer to home. I knew a lot of people here. Obviously, like I said, my sisters were both here, and my wife, which was my girlfriend at the time, she was going to be at Louisville as well. And so I had community here, but that was still just a very hard time with the decision, and also just moving everything and going to a new place and a new team and everything. So it was hard. Plus, not long after that was when I found out my uncle, that's when he got diagnosed, was that same year with a very rare form of T-cell lymphoma, cancer. And so it was just not the best time. And so I remember, going to the Bible studies and the chapels and everything with football. And I remember one of the verses that we talked about several times that year was, it was James 1:2-4, and that will always stick out to me because that, he talks about how we need to count it joy when we face trials and tribulations of many kinds, because it's the testing of your faith that produces perseverance, and to let it finish its work so we can be complete and mature and lacking nothing. And that I had never really thought about it in terms of like, a family member having cancer, or going through just a hard time in life when you're trying to transition and going to a new place and going through the whole transfer thing, and kind of starting over, because I had played a good bit at Virginia Tech, and then having to come here and start over, and I didn't start very many games that next year, and it just didn't start out necessarily how I thought it would or wanted it to. But again, that talking about that verse and understanding that my relationship with God is the whole point and the purpose. It's not what happens on the field or how much playing time I get or how many starts I get or anything like that or how well I do at practice. But when I go through those trials, it's when I lean on Jesus, when I turn to him instead of, anything of this world or, anything else besides him, that I try to put my trust in or that I try to put my worth or value in. But when I lean on him, it's not for him to give me everything I want. It's so we could be closer to him, so we could be and grow more like him. And so that's kind of the period of time I would say where I started to really dive in deeper, when I started to pray more consistently, and just have genuine and honest conversations with God about everything, good and bad, and not only setting aside times to pray in the morning and at night and at certain times of the day, but just before I go out on the practice field or, just driving to the facility or anything, anytime, just having conversations with him to grow that relationship. That's kind of the period of time I would say.
And that's a great segue into kind of where we'll go. Obviously, you tough guy, tough family, and I say that in a positive way. Tough, like just a lot of grit to your family, and that's your mom, your dad, that's you and your sisters, and I've always said that sports, not to undermine higher education, but sports taught me words that education couldn't teach me. Just like fight and drive and determination and consistency and discipline and all those words that they like to put on the back of a shirt. And a lot of those words trickle over into my relationship with God. Discipline, saying no to your body, saying yes to things that God wants you to do, fight, staying firm in your faith, accountability, putting people around you. But when you talked about James 1:2, just consider it pure joy when you go through trials. That when you become a Christian, you go through a lot of different things. You mentioned one about your uncle. I know that's dear to your heart. That's dear, and even part of a foundation that you created that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But that's a big part of your story. Tell me a little bit about what kind of went on with that.
Yeah, with my uncle. And so, this was December of 2021 is when he got diagnosed with the full name, and hopefully I don't butcher it, but it's primary cutaneous gamma delta T-cell lymphoma, and it's just very, very rare and aggressive form of cancer. And at the time of diagnosis, again, this is just off the top of my head, so hopefully I get these right. But at the time, I think only 6 people in the world had this specific type of cancer. Only a very few amount in the last 25 years have had it. It's very rare. I think the average that anybody had lived or survived with it after diagnosis was 15 months, I think. And the longest anybody had lived was 5 years with post-diagnosis of this cancer. And so, obviously not anything that you ever want to hear or think you're going to hear, especially for him. He was a great athlete. He played, football, baseball. He was a running back at Ole Miss even for a year. And so he has always been healthy, always been in good shape. And so, it was, I know a shock to him and a shock to all of us that, this would come up, because again, you never think that it's going to happen to you until it does. And so that happened in December of 21. He started chemo very shortly after, I believe the next month in January. And then he ended up having, after a few rounds of chemo, he had a stem cell transplant later on that year, I believe in September or sometime that fall, from which his oldest son Bryce was his donor. He was a half match, and so he was the donor. He was able to give his stem cells, I believe, out of his neck to my Uncle Derek, and so that's been a huge blessing. Obviously, the road the past 4, almost 5 years now has been hard, hard for them, that their our whole family, and especially them. But he's been doing well. He's been, just continuing to fight. And to me, the best part about it is, if you saw him, right before he went to the doctor and got diagnosed, or at any point in the last 4 to 5 years, if you met him and didn't know that he was, dealing with something and had cancer, then you would never see it. You would never see it on him in the way he acted and the way he was. He was the same guy this whole time, and so and continues to be, which is amazing. He still has the joy and is the same person, which has been amazing and very inspiring to see for me. Just to see somebody that can be going through that with, his 2 youngest are in middle school right now. His oldest, Bryce, who has graduated high school now. For just to see somebody going through that and still have that joy and be the same guy all the time. You see that and you think, well, what's my excuse to be any different, or to change, and so, or to complain and feel like I deserve anything. So that's been a huge inspiration to me, and so thankfully in the NFL they do My Cause, My Cleats. Each year we can kind of choose an organization or foundation to support, and so my rookie year, I remember I texted my aunt and just asked her, I want to do something to support anything that has to do with Derek and what has been going on and what he's been going through. And so she sent me an organization called NMDP, which is they were formerly Be the Match, but they're the National Marrow Donor Program. And so I did a little bit of research on it, and that's who my agent contacted them, and so we had some conversations, and I shared, kind of my story and my uncle's journey with it, and thankfully we've been able to do a lot of things together, and I've been able to help support them and going to events. We even had an event, a drive here on University of Louisville's campus last year, which was amazing, and that you helped with, and got people to join the registry, which is amazing, and because that's what the organization does is they just help save lives through stem cell therapy, and so they do everything from support families and donors in their travel. If they hopefully find a match, the donor would, for travel for anywhere they had to go to be able to give the stem cells and anything, they cover.
And
all
you
the
don't
costs
you
for
don't know
that.
how much. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you don't know what you need until you're there on it.
Exactly,
And Derek never would have thought about this until, man, he had to be the recipient of that.
Yes.
And so if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, that sounds I can do that. Of course, everybody can do this, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what would be something that somebody could do?
Yeah, so they, I don't want to say the wrong website, but I know it's NMDP, so they could just Google that, go to the website, and there's all kinds of information on there, and and there's a place on there where you can go on and register to join the registry. There are certain kind of requirements as far as just they've kind of. And again, I don't want to butcher this, but they've kind of tightened up a little bit just on who they want on the registry, just because they want the people that are on there to be possible donors to be the most healthy and of the right age group, to where they would have the most likelihood of it hopefully working and saving somebody's life and giving them a second chance. And so, but yeah, that it's super easy. Once you do it, you're on the registry for the rest of your life, and so.
And that's why we got to be
going
That's why we
NMDP.
got to be very active with the athletes that we have on campus.
Yes,
because they're probably the most in shape.
exactly.
So you finished at the University of Louisville. Great football career at Virginia Tech and at the University of Louisville, which is fantastic. A great leader on our team. You go undrafted, free agent, and you start that process, and now you're with the New York Giants, which, man, love hearing that. Just you being a pro athlete, and because you use that platform. What's it like? You know, especially when you're a young boy, man. You always hear that you work for the National Football League. Like, does that even? Sometimes it's hard to even register, man. Like, you're a professional athlete. What's it like to work in the NFL?
It's been an amazing experience. We've kind of been all over the place already a little bit. You know, I've been on 3 different teams now, and kind of went through each 3 my first year and my rookie year. So we did a lot of moving, and you know, got to experience kind of the whole business side of the NFL pretty early. But absolutely, it's been an amazing experience, and there have been a lot of moments where I just kind of sit back and I'm like, wow, this is, you know, I'm really here in the NFL. To me, just, you know, sitting in my locker looking at the helmet and just the logos that I've seen growing up, you know, ever since I can remember, seeing them on TV and everything, and now I'm actually wearing one, which is, you know, it's just surreal to me, and I'm incredibly thankful for it each day. And that's really been the biggest thing, because you see constantly in the NFL how fast it can go. Just, you know, they call it a revolving door, and just how guys, you know, from day to day, you know, you have to kind of win the job consistently and earn the right to be there. And even sometimes then that's still not, you know, you still just may be in the wrong spot at the wrong time, but it's an incredible experience, and I've been thankful to be able to meet a lot of amazing people and be able to play with guys that, you know, I grew up watching, which has been awesome, and so it's been, and able to learn a lot in a lot of different aspects on the football field, and been able to help in the community a lot, thankfully, with different organizations or just, you know, events that they have. And
it's like a dream come true, but how long did it take for you to realize that this is a business?
Not very long at all, honestly. I remember when you first go, you have rookie minicamp when you first come out of college, and so I remember we went through rookie minicamp, and it went pretty well. And so we're after that, they do what's called like rookie development. So for us, pretty much each day of the week in the summer, we had something, whether it was just a meeting, they would bring somebody in to talk to us about either a different area of the NFL as far as different department in the building, or about finances, or about certain things. And sometimes we would go out. So I remember we went to one of those rookie development meetings, and one of the guys wasn't there anymore, and I found out that they had already, you know, cut somebody and released him. And so I was like, wow, that was like the first time I actually saw it happen, and it was super fast. It was like a week or 2 after we had gotten there, you know, and so that just kind of, you know, kept, you know, that kind of narrative has stayed true since being in there. I just, you know, sometimes you come in and you see somebody in the morning, and an hour later, you know, they'll be at their locker with a box cleaning it out. So it was, I've seen that kind of business side of it, but also it provides for unbelievable opportunity for everybody that is able to be in that locker room. So there's definitely 2 sides of it, but it's and it's very humbling too. You know, walking around and just knowing that you see it, or maybe like for me, it's happened to me a few times now. And so I know how fast it can go, and it's not the best feeling, you know. I remember when I got cut for the second time my rookie year, I started with the Detroit Lions, and then for about 2 months, the first 2 months of the season, was with the New England Patriots. And so it was sometime in early November. I remember I go in and I'm working out in the weight room, and I see these guys from the front office come in that, I'd never seen them before. So I kind of knew that they were coming to get somebody. And, I just kind of looked away before I was about to do my last set of, of what I was doing. And so I just kind of look away, and then he comes up to me, and I knew it would happen. So we go through that whole process, and, 30 minutes later, I'm out of the building, and I'm, Riley, my wife, she's, 6-7 months pregnant or so at the time. And we were renting a house, kind of about 15 minutes away from the facility there in Foxborough. And so I remember I didn't want to tell her over the phone. I knew I was going to see her in about 10, 15 minutes. So I just called my agent real quick to tell him, and so he can start reaching out or see if any had any other opportunities. And that drive home, I remember there was just so many things going through my mind, and I'm just thinking back to, like, what did I, was it this that I did? Was it these bad reps that I had? Or, what could I have done different or anything? And all these things are going through my mind, kind of trying to blame myself and feel like, because at that point I didn't feel like it's not a good feeling at all. It's very humbling. You feel like, well, I just lost an opportunity, I had seen several times where guys, they'll get released or cut, and then that's it, and so.
And that's hard, man. Yes. I haven't been through that, but when you put your identity in something and somebody walks into the weight room that quickly and just says, "Hey, we need to talk," that's when your identity can really be shaken if it's not deeper than the game. Because Absolutely. Some of those people get picked up, example, you did, but some guys never recover from that. They don't get another opportunity. And so if your identity is grounded in just being an NFL football player, it's going to be highly disappointing. And so yes, you do football. Football's what you do, but it's really not who you are, and that's what I've enjoyed watching you, where you have your faith in Christ, you have a solid family. And then I'd love to talk about Riley, just you have a strong relationship. You've been dating her for a long time, and you all came to the FCA meetings together, and it was good to see a good, godly couple that wanted to grow in their walks with Christ. And she's gifted too now. She's got some giftedness to her. I'll let you brag on her. But tell me what that was like. You've been together a long time. Tell me why Riley makes you a better man.
Gosh, that's a long list. But just to kind of piggyback on the story that I was just talking about, that's a perfect example for me, because, like I said, that I was thinking the whole way there. I was thinking to myself, how am I going to tell her? I feel like I don't know what. I know it's going to work out, but I don't know what we're going to do right now. We're, however many miles from home, all the way up in Massachusetts, a long ways from Georgetown, Kentucky, and from both of our families, and really all of our friends that we had and that we had developed. And so, and again, like I said, we had just moved from. She was seeing a doctor in Kentucky. She had just moved very recently to a doctor in Boston. And so we were going to have to move again, and it was so late in the pregnancy where I was thinking, she had just told me like a couple weeks before that usually it's hard for, women to move providers that late in the pregnancy, just because, sometimes they won't, bring them on. And so all these things going through my mind. And so I remember I pulled up to the house, parked. I sat in the car for just a couple more minutes, and I think she looked out the window and saw me in the car, and so I went out and went in the house and started talking to her about it, and she could see I was obviously disappointed, but she very, very quickly kind of talked to me about how it's not. First of all, she said it was okay, everything's going to be fine, but she very quickly changed my perspective to. We are not and have never been in control of any of this. And, we serve a very powerful and faithful God, and he has always had our back. He's always been with us. And so what's different now? Just because, you just got released from an NFL team, you basically got fired from your job. But, this is not the end of anything. And so she very quickly just, shifted my perspective to, again, that kind of worldly view of, I just kind of, what I put a lot of value in, and what seems to be what a lot of people in the world kind of forced to be very important for us, and make it kind of our, it's very easy to make that your whole entire identity and world, and what you place your worth in, like you said a second ago. But it, like you said, it so quickly will just fall apart and just shatter right before you. And so if you do that and have your value in that, it's not going to last very long at all. And so, especially being in the NFL, you see that daily. And so she just put that in perspective for me real quick, and I'm very thankful for that. And so we weren't on the streets, so-called, for very long. I mean, it was just a few hours later when I got the call from the Giants and signed down there. But that's just a really good example of how she has been for me. I remember from an early age, like I said, we started dating. I think I was in 8th grade, right before high school. It was that track season. We met on the track team and at Scott County Middle School, and she's always been a great athlete. She was a phenomenal track athlete. She was a mid-distance runner to, she would do the 400, 800 mile, and really whatever you asked her to do, she would do it and be really good at it. She threw a little bit as well. And more importantly to me and to her, I think she is an unbelievable opera singer. And so she's incredibly talented. God has given her several gifts, and she's just been my rock through the whole time that we've been together. What always sticks with me and kind of left an impression on me very early and helped me understand and know, what I was blessed with. This was we were still in middle school, and we would go to track meets together, and she would want to pray before we all competed. And so that we started that very early, and then she started that really. And so that's something that we've carried on through our whole marriage. And when we were competing and still in athletics together, to when, now when I'm doing it for my career in the NFL and in college, we would still do that. We would still pray before games and everything. So that for both of us has always been, thankfully, the center of kind of our relationship, and she's been kind of the rock for that.
That's so good, man. To hear you brag, that the older I become and the more that I understand my need for Jesus, to see a married man brag on his wife, that's just good. And to see you guys weather storms together has been great. That you can weather the storms, but also that you can really enjoy the blessings that come along in a marriage. And celebrated another blessing of a year already. Tell us about your son.
Yeah, he's he's just an incredible blessing. We thank God every day for him. It's been it is, parenting is challenging, obviously, as you know, but it's been the most rewarding thing that I've ever experienced. He was born actually in the last week of our season, my rookie year, in 2025, and so he was born January 2nd. And again, that whole pregnancy, having to move a few different times and kind of just go through certain challenges with that. It was just, I remember the obviously the day and just that first week that he was here with us. It was just surreal that he that we were just blessed with him. But just watching him grow through this whole first year of his life has been awesome to see. And be able to experience all the new things with him and bring him along to all the different places and, things that we get to experience together now, in so many different cities, and going to my games, and, for my first active game this year, seeing him on the sideline with Riley, and, being able to go over and take pictures and hug him and hug her. It was such an awesome thing.
It's got to be a great thing, when he gets older, knowing that his dad played in the NFL, but also that his mom could probably sing lullabies better than anybody else.
100%.
I'm sure Grandma and Grandpa got him a horse and got him doing all kinds of stuff on the farm. Man,
Yes.
just the last question I kind of want to give you, man. And as I look over my life, it's the answer to me anyway has been different, whether this season in my life. But who would you say that Jesus is to you right now?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question.
No, it's in my life. Sometimes he could be. I see him as my friend, and sometimes, obviously he's my provider, and sometimes it's just my rock and my comfort, and all of those words. So it could be different. And yes, we know that he's our Lord and Savior, but in this season that you're in right now, what would it be?
I would say, and again, thinking about it, it has changed a little bit even just this past year. I would say right now, I would say he's my rock. To me, one thing that I feel he has been, teaching me and laying on my heart a lot over the past few months has been just to just be present, especially having Asher now, and just kind of looking at things from a whole new perspective as far as, we are, God has blessed us with a child, and to just raise him and just thinking about the kind of family and the kind of household that we want him to be raised up in, and brought up in, the things that we want him to, to just learn and grow with. I would say just being present in the moment, and just serving God, being close to God right where we are, not worrying about anything outside of that, anything in the future, or dwelling on the past or anything like that. But when I think about that, I just think of him as being my foundation and just my rock as far as just kind of thinking about what I want Asher to be in, and how I want him to be. It puts things in perspective for me, and what the things that I need to be doing, who I need to be leaning on, and who I need to be, putting my full faith in. And when I think about that, I think about what does real faith look like, and what does it look like in my life, not just talking about it and wanting that and praying for that, but truly living that out in my life. As far as keeping him as my rock and leaning on him, and not going to my career, not going through the ups and downs of the daily practices, or anything else, or other people, or getting caught off in traffic or anything like that. The busyness of being up there in New Jersey when we were up there and everything. It's just all the outside world. And instead of looking at any of that, but leaning on and look always to going back to God and going back to His Word, going back to Jesus and what He has done for us and continues to do, I think. And that, to me, that's what one thing that I found and thought about is I struggle to humbly serve people when I'm not in relationship with God and in close relationship with Him. I can't serve anybody else if I'm not serving Him and our Father. And so, really, just I see Him as my rock.
That's good, man. That's and you know, when I hear you talk about the NFL, you know, like any man, you get juiced up a little bit, but there's a different kind of tone in your voice, and some of your spirit jumps out when you talk about your wife, and you talk about your son, you talk about your family, and in those things, you know, the Bible talks in Matthew. It says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And man, you're a man that walks with God, and you hunger and thirst for Him, and your relationship with God. Your your vertical relationship is right with God, and therefore your horizontal relationships are good too. And so, man, I appreciate you coming on here, man. It's a joy to do life with you and watch you grow in your faith and watch you grow in your marriage and your parenting. And you know, when those storms come, it's not if, it's just when they come. Your house will stand because it's built on a rock. It's built on the foundation. And to me, that's what we hang our hat on. That's because there's nothing that the world can throw our way that we don't go to God. So, man, I'm going to pray for us. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. It's a joy to call you friend, brother. I'm pray for us.